Okay, then we can start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 4 out of 5 doctors recommend fragments of silicon. Just don't put it in your mouth.
I guess that's what's happened when you cook up these things while making lunch.
Sort of.
Yeah,
That
were you
is
making?
that is when the last bit got added.
I kind of figured. Were you making a sandwich?
Not exactly, but anyway.
Oh, yeah, not important. Yeah, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon European Edition. Joining us this week is Teej Marshall of Sushee.
Hello.
Yes. Not sure if you know Sushi's backstory with our program, but we had Benjamin on the program a couple times last year,
Okay.
around the time of the Kickstarter. Like, and well, now that Fear Effects Sedna is near, I believe it is content complete.
It is content complete, yep, and release is confirmed for early 2018.
Right. So it's getting close to release here. So we felt it was about time to revisit this title. And indeed, there's another one to talk about, but we'll get to that when we get to that.
Yep.
It's like we like to start out by asking the personality that is presented before us, their history with games, like what got you interested into games in the first place.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'm from England and I moved around a lot, and I ended up loving games and music as a kid, and ended up kind of going down the music route more, and then trying to swing that back to kind of doing music or sound design for games, and then ended up kind of in the communications side of everything, and then kind of brought that all together and started working in the games industry. And for me, it was always like as a kid growing up with, I was a big into Nintendo games, and it was all this kind of combination of all these different like cinematic experiences, that all those art forms of the images, the sound, the music, and the interactivity of it all kind of being combined together really sucked me in. So yeah, it just kind of snowballed from then.
Huh. So what was your first video game industry job? Was it Sushee or is it somewhere else?
No, my first working in the games industry properly was in a development team called Kabojo in Paris. So I was doing more like QA and testing, and a lot of like the English localization and communications side of things, as it was another French company, and I'm native English speaker. Anything kind of communicated like that went through me there. But then also on the side, had done some music for some indie games and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, we've met others of your ilk that do translations, like specifically French. I'm like, how long have you been doing that?
I mean, I didn't really do, because my French is pretty rusty, so I don't really do like hardcore translations, but it would be more about kind of getting the tone right in English from, I mean, now it's pretty easy with my level of French plus Google Translate, and then just making sure it's written in coherent English. I've had more experience writing communications for companies or talking about things online in general, rather than just doing exclusively translations.
And how did you hook up with Sushee?
So I just wanted to move back to France and ended up looking around for studios that weren't in Paris again, and we are based in Lannion, on the north coast of France in Brittany. It's a really small town, but it's like a great place to be creative with the countryside around you, right on the coast, and everything like that. So they had a position that I applied for, and now I'm here. I've been here since July this year.
So you're a new hire.
Yeah, one of the most recent. Yeah, but it's been a steep learning curve, like learning all the projects and the team, and even was at EGX a few weeks ago, the big games event in Birmingham in the UK. Which was great to be showing off the latest demo of Fear Effect Sydney to people and speaking to people at it, especially after being in the company for such a short time in comparison to some of the other dev teams there. It was a good way to be hands-on and speak to people face-to-face about it.
And what do you do there specifically?
So I'm the community manager, dealing with all the communication online, and running the community and the social media channels and all that kind of thing.
Were you hired specifically for that job, or were you hired for like doing the music and you just kind of fell in there?
No, it's more from the social media, digital marketing kind of aspect I was hired for, but have helped out in terms of some sound design elements and things like that. So it's really cool being a part of a smaller, I suppose, team. Even though we're constantly expanding here and hiring more and more, it's one of the benefits of being a smaller team is you get to try out every different kind of role, and it just keeps moving all the time.
Right. Well, how many people are there now?
So in total there's about 15, but not everyone works in the office all the time. Like one of the animators works remotely but comes in every now and then, and we're looking to hire some more people in the creative team, and we're moving to a bigger office around the corner beginning of next year. So should be looking to be a higher number quite soon.
And so what is your previous experience, if any, with the Fear Effect franchise?
Well, I mean, mine personally was more I knew about the game. I think at the time it came out, I was maybe fairly young. I was more of I had a Nintendo and was around like friends' houses playing Resident Evil and things like that on the PlayStation 1. So I kind of I knew it existed, but I didn't have that nostalgic factor like a lot of the fans do. But then as soon as I heard about what Sushee was doing, I picked up a copy and played through it.
And did you play their previous project, Goetia?
Yes, yeah, that was great. That was one of the first games that was released on the Square Enix Collective. So
the first.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah. Yeah, no, that was great, and I think it's because of the kind of atmosphere and the mythological themes that are running in that game that kind of was also, as well as the pitch for Fear Effect Sedna, was also a really good angle for selling the idea for Sedna to Square Enix.
Well, it's the only one of those pitches that they actually greenlit. They got others for a couple other IPs, but that didn't go anywhere. So They clearly saw the merits in the pitch. It's like, as far as the fan base goes, it's been a lot more divisive. Like, because, and I think this came up when we were talking to Benjamin about like the Kickstarter and the campaign and all that. Fear Effect said that it wasn't exactly the game that people were wanting out of the franchise.
No,
like,
yeah, everyone was more after Inferno, the game that got cancelled.
well,
That's,
yeah.
I think
If not Inferno, then like a new game in that style. They wanted survival horror, and Fear Effect Sedna is Shadowrun light, if I could give it a description.
Right. Yeah, I think it comes up a lot, the whole gameplay mechanic for Sedna, and I think one of the big things when you're trying to add to a franchise with such a passionate fan base, you've kind of got two ways of going about it. You're going to constantly try and stay true to the original series to be a part of that, to contribute something that's part of that universe, and you're either going to go, well, we just make more of the same, or you try and do something new and different. And we went down the route of trying to do something new and different. We wrote original story with the original writer of Fear Effect, so it still has the same tone and everything like that.
Right.
But then we tried to take it to new places, and then I think we had the reasoning behind the gameplay mechanic changes was, I think we kind of sat down. It was a process of what's the most important thing in the game, and ending Fear Effect, and to us it was the characters and the story, and this change and shift in gameplay mechanic allowed us to have more than one character on screen at a time, so they could share dialogue, and you could control more than one character at a time, and switch between different characters with different abilities and things like that. So it kind of had its excuse, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it sounds like they've done everything they could to get make it feel consistent and in the same universe and stuff. It's just that you definitely get a different sort of player experience from a over the shoulder thing and then from a overview tactical thing.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think again some reasoning behind that is about trying to attract new players, as well as just making a game for people who played Fear Effect 1 15 years ago, or even longer than that. I suppose it was 1999, 2000. So yes, it is different. But then that became, it was one of the reasons we took the project to Kickstarter as well, to have the fans kind of decide almost how it went, and we were successfully funded. But it's definitely been a constant theme about the original style of the games, and again, like we'll talk about probably later, is why we announced Fear Effect Reinvented.
Indeed. Well, yeah, we talked about this in depth at the time, and the other consideration was budget. Like, when they were running the Kickstarter, Sushee just didn't have the resources to make a quote-unquote proper Fear Effect styled game. And, the missing factor is something we haven't touched upon here, and that's Forever Entertainment. They are the, co-producer. What exactly is their role on the Fear Effect franchise?
They're good friends of Sushee for a start. They're investors and co-publishers, and they're huge fans of the Fear Effect franchise. But they've been like a huge help on, they've had input on all sorts of points from game design, or and they're even doing the console ports at the moment. So they're making sure that that Sedna goes on to PS4, Xbox One, and Switch.
Mm-hmm. And Are they doing those simultaneously, or like are say the PlayStation 4, Xbox One versions ahead of the Switch version, which is oftentimes the case?
I don't actually know on the detailed progress
Mm-hmm.
of how it's going. Like if one's in front of the other, is they're actually, I think they're based in Poland, so we don't have like a day-to-day kind of update, or me personally, I don't have an up-to-date progress report
Fair
on
enough.
that.
Fair enough. But zeroing in a bit further, this game was indeed formally announced for the Nintendo Switch. Um, I'm wondering, is there going to be any unique features that take advantage of the Switch's, architecture, or is it just going to be a straight port?
I think it's going to be a straight port. Maybe some of they were talking. It might be some of the puzzles might be able to be controlled with the touchscreen,
Mm-hmm.
but nothing that would, be vastly different if you had a touchscreen on your PC, for example.
Yeah, and obviously the Switch, you can't rely too much on the touchscreen since it's not always available.
Yeah, so I mean, again, I think they're probably in the process of seeing. It wouldn't be extra productivity to be done to add some new features. It would be like if it just made sense during the port, those features might be available. But other than that,
right?
Yeah, and let me see. Now, is it Xbox One, PlayStation 4, Switch, and PC for both titles?
yes, yeah, Reinvented will also be on those four. Yeah.
Okay, good. Good to hear. Good to hear. Anyway, moving forward. So, shifting back to Sedna specifically, um, let's see how to. For those who might not know, what's the new story? What's going on with the characters and such?
So the whole story is set after the events of the previous three games, if you include Inferno,
Mm-hmm.
and what we wanted to do with the story is still have familiar aspects, but take them with a new place with the mythology. So in Sedna, they go from Paris to Hong Kong, but they end up in Greenland, and it's about exploring the Inuit mythology rather than the mythology in Hong Kong that was in the previous series.
Right. And remember when we were talking about this with Benjamin last year, he mentioned that, the reason that the Inuit mythology was chosen is because, well, it's just never been done before in the game. Like,
yeah, there's so much of all of that folklore, and it is. I've never heard of it in any. There's no references in pop culture to it or anything like this kind of. I mean, there's an amount of people that have never seen or read Lord of the Rings, but they'll get references and jokes to hobbits or something. And regarding Greenland and its Inuit mythology, there was no frame of reference, so it's all really new, and it's also exciting in terms of like character design and things like that, because it's all these, there's lots of ice and killer whale, orca kind of monster hybrids, and all this kind of thing. You wouldn't, it'd be hard to even dream up without having this kind of mythology from there. So yeah, it's really interesting to learn about as you play it as well.
No doubt, no doubt. Honestly, the closest frame of reference I can think of in terms of video games is a game called Going Home, not to be confused with Gone Home. Going Home is an Inuit game that was actually made by Inuits, although that's from Alaska, not Greenland.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out.
The 2D platformer, most interesting about it was all the Inuit culture that was infused in there. Like,
Yeah,
it's a pretty good teaching tool. Like,
You
now
certainly get an interesting culture when you're in that kind of a climate, that when you're developing your, society.
well, I suppose it can't be helped.
Hmm.
Like,
yeah.
like now, well, getting back to the Inuit stuff, I once again I'm recalling the previous interview, and I remember Benjamin mentioning that they were working with like a specialist in Inuit culture to make sure things were about as accurate as possible. Was that the case?
I don't actually know because all the script was and the story was written before I joined the team. But I do know that I mean I'm sure it was. We have our writer Lucy is very thorough with this kind of thing and wouldn't want to have a trip up there. And I think most of the story and the character design and the enemies and everything like that and the locations were probably influenced by the research itself. And because before we started, we probably didn't really know much about Greenland and its Inuit mythology, but we did work with John's Platten as well. So in terms of accuracy,
we've actually had John on the program as well. Like,
okay, great.
It's nice to know people.
Yeah. Happy birthday to him yesterday as well. It was his birthday.
Yeah, I saw that on Facebook. I think I saw the message too late to actually wish him a happy birthday, but yeah, it's like, such things go.
Yeah.
Anyway, so in regards to the cutscenes, we got it playing right here, and they're actually pretty faithful to the old game. Can you give us any insight as to how these things were created?
So the art style in general is still we're trying to have a nod to the originals, obviously, but with that kind of current day HD gaming expectations. If people switch something on and they saw graphics from a long time ago that weren't an ironic or a stylistic choice, then it can just look old. And so we wanted to make sure that we're making something that still looked new, but with a nod to the old games. And both with Sedna and with Reinvented, it's been the similar kind of process about trying combinations of the old and new techniques, I suppose, to achieve those results. And one of our animators is a huge fan of the original series. I think he actually approached Sushee directly when he found out about the project to work on the cutscenes in animating them and keeping them kind of true to the originals as much as possible.
Indeed, and like I said, it's a pretty good facsimile of what they did 15 years ago. Like, I wouldn't call it 1-to-1 because, well, I'm like, it's a PlayStation 1, so, and going for that kind of style can be tricky, as you mentioned. There has been the occasional game that's tried it, like, I'm trying to think of the title, like Michigan 1995 or something. Like, it was a survival horror game that was like directly in the style of a PlayStation 1 game.
Right, yeah. But I mean, it's like pixel art games are a great example of where, pixel art is quite era, and now people are pushing that art style and with the new tools to crazy extents, and it's kind of making a whole new genre of gaming in the current day with that super old art style. And the thing is, we're in that kind of middle bracket with PlayStation 1, is that it's not trying to use the new tools to recreate that feel, but with still making something modern and something that feels like it could come out today and still be relevant.
Indeed, and while the game itself isn't out, there was a demo. In fact, that's where this footage is coming from. It's from the already released Fear Effect Sedna demo. And I suppose I do have a couple of questions about this. First of all, what was the reception and feedback from the people who played the demo?
So the original demo, I think, was uploaded in May of this year, and so the feedback from that one was really varied, and also we expected to get that kind of. And we even had a whole thread on people reporting bugs and issues and stuff, and the community was really helping us do that first phase of early QA. And so that was half of the feedback right there. And then we had mixed kind of feedback and reviews, and then we ended up actually shifting the gameplay to more combat than strategy. So you kind of have this mix of action, stealth, and the puzzles, rather than, I think before it was maybe the first kind of prototype that was released back in May was more a mix of everything rather than honing in on the factors we wanted to really bring out more. So the new demo that we've been taking around to EGX and Tokyo Game Show and places like that, that is the first part of the game, whereas the demo that was released back in May on Steam was more a prototype of us showing this could be it. It's 90% there. What do you guys think? And it really helped to get the feedback and to make it a stronger game that it is now.
And what's been the feedback on the new and improved demo from those who've attended these shows?
It's been really good, and I've watched. It's really funny to see such a when you spend like 2 or 3 days sat there watching hundreds of people have a go at the game of all kind of different levels, and the first level has this one puzzle, and it was because I know the game inside out. It's really obvious to you once you know how to do it, and obviously watching all these people do it for their first time, and to see the range of some people got it in under a minute, and some people took 10 minutes, some people couldn't do it, and I think there was also kind of again, it's one of those nods back to those old, puzzles in the old games where, sometimes you had to take down notes, or you're watching the death scenes over again, see how many different ways you can die, because you frustratingly can't get the right answer.
Yeah, that's something that's definitely carried over from the old Fear Effect games. The deaths, like I remember dying a lot in those games, and them being rather gruesome. Like,
yeah,
indeed, and
it's one of my favorite parts, I think, from the old ones. And there's one great death scene in Sedna that I won't spoil for potential players, but it's later on in the game. But I think they're one of the funnest parts to watch.
Well, until we see it, I'm gonna have to take your word on it. Yeah, like, and also, okay, that's in terms of gameplay elements. In terms of plot elements that are in the old demo, are they still going to be in the final game, or are those no longer relevant either?
Yeah, I think the story is being set up in that demo, so that is still the story. It was more about honing in on the various aspects of gameplay that making several points stronger rather than having more elements that were weaker.
Right.
So I think it was a bit convoluted before, and then we decided, okay, we honed it in on these elements that we wanted to concentrate on, and it made those, as we were concentrating on those more.
That is what my suspicions told me, but just had to be sure. And indeed, on this new demo, will we see that released on Steam sometime before the final game gets released, or is that something you would release after?
I'm not sure. I think there's a possibility that the demo will be updated on Steam, but it's one of those things that we have to check with Forever and Square Enix and everything like that. So there is a demo that's there. That is the newest one. Whether it goes on Steam or not will be. But I think if you stay tuned on Steam, it will probably tell you whether if it's been updated or not.
Right, and yeah, I suppose that would also flow to like the console versions, because right now the only demo is the old one on Steam. The PlayStation 4 doesn't have one, and so on and so forth. So yeah. That's something that might be addressed in the future as well. Like, let's see. So, when did the game become content complete?
About two weeks ago. We announced that we'd finished all content in the game, and now it's Forever doing the console ports, and Square Enix QA team are also doing a pass of QA on the final version. And we secured release window for early 2018.
And can you give us any insight what the communication process is like between Sushee, Forever, and Square Enix?
So I suppose in one aspect we have to kind of check with all three parties everything before anything goes out. So that's one side of it. Like as the person posting updates or talking to you guys about it, knowing what is confirmed and what's not confirmed and all that kind of thing we have to check with everyone.
Sure.
But in terms of on the other side of things, they've really been supportive and letting us create our own game. It's not been like there's not someone constantly looking over your shoulder. It's more someone helping you out when you have something to resolve or you want to look for advice and all that kind of thing. So, and they're great guys on both teams. I got to hang out with the Square Enix Collective team at EGX, and Benjamin was over in Tokyo Game Show at the same weekend with the guys from Forever. So it works out well.
That's good to hear. And let's see. The story. What can you tell us about the story at this point in time?
Well, there's the same characters being mercenaries, and as they were, and there's a new character that gets introduced in this game called Axel. He is he has some history with Hannah, and they inevitably end up having some conflict, but end up also having to work together. And the journey they're on kind of leads them to Greenland, and the mythology kind of unfolds and starts being a large part of the game. And it's hard because I don't want to say too much without spoiling it. But at the same time, the demo just is the real kind of setup for Sedna story wise, and
right.
It leads on from there really well.
Right, and you mentioned This was following all 3 games, including Inferno. Is there anything? What from that canceled game, if anything, do they need to? Does the audience need to know from, in terms of plot or anything, story, whatever?
So yeah, a lot of people were asking about having some kind of. I mean, the reason Reinvented was announced is because so many people were asking about it. It just made so much sense, and there was a lot of demand for, like, could we animate the first and second one, and maybe some of Inferno to kind of summarize the story before this game and everything. And I think the story still works quite well as a standalone thing. So if anyone new was to play it, they'd know there was references to an old team of characters, but it wouldn't be essential to the plot line. So, but then working with John Zerplatten, it was also another way that we kind of had our certainty of everything in this story fits in the universe of Fear Effect. There's no inconsistencies or anything like that. So,
well, no more inconsistencies. I remember when we. Yeah, that's a hard word to say for some reason. Anyway, I remember when we had him on the show, he wasn't too pleased with how Fear Effect 2 turned out. Like, due to elements that ended up in that game that kind of conflicted with what he intended for, like, Hannah as a character and so on and so forth. But, so we roll along, I guess.
Yeah, did he have? Was he writing Inferno? I'm not.
No, he.
Sure if he was involved.
No, he was involved in the first Fear Effect game. He was not involved with the subsequent Fear Effect games. Like,
Retro Helix. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like his co-writer Stephen Lau, if I'm remembering correctly, was involved with, like, Fear Effect 2, and I'm not sure if I ever saw a writing credit with Fear Effect Inferno. Like, but
yeah, that's why I wasn't sure if he came back for Inferno.
Yeah, the point is he wasn't involved with the second game, and there were elements that cropped up. Rain showed up and kind of messed up with the dynamic he had built in the first Fear Effect game. And, I'm like, and, well, it's to the point where that's kind of an irreversible thing now. So, whatever's lining up with Fear Effect Sedna and Fear Effect Reimagined, it has the same people working on it, as opposed to what happened here.
Yeah. I can understand that.
Yeah. So, and I suppose we should talk about Fear Effect Reimagined a bit on its own, but before we do that...
Reinvented.
Sorry, I reinvented.
Sorry.
Like, there are so many re's these days. It's like remastered.
Yeah, absolutely.
It gets hard to keep track of what.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Oh, so, but before that, we do have the teaser trailer to play. If Teddy Fenn has that queued up.
Yep.
All
right, I'm just going.
Right. So it's not a long thing, as this was announced a month ago.
Yeah, about a month ago. Yeah, and that was it's just a teaser.
Yeah.
Rather than the actual trailer.
Now, from what I remember reading, this is supposed to be a faithful remake of the first game.
Yes. So we will really want to stay true to the original and create something that is a reinvention of the first Fear Effect. So again,
make it prettier, but
game,
not change the mechanics in too much.
Exactly. So it's just making it prettier. We will be also improving the controls because if you've played with those old tank controls, you might find it feels a bit strange now. It takes a bit to get used to, but we'll also leave in that as an option for the purists who want to play with the old controls as well.
I was gonna say insert stodgy gamer rant about tank controls being inherent and important to the survival horror experience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So mostly I've heard that about like Resident Evil and stuff.
Yeah. Right. So it's we'll still be doing the full motion video backgrounds with the fixed camera angles, and we'll have the old tank controls and some new improved controls, which will be more, I suppose, for new players to that kind of fixed camera angle games that have been, the younger generation and have only played games with the newer, those newer controls in more.
Right. The thing of it is, I encountered a game that had quasi-tank controls, like not always, but it was one of those games where, it was at a hard fixed camera angle, like the pre-rendered generation, and so, your controller would move in like the direction of the room, and it would change in each area depending on where the camera. It's like if you played a PlayStation 1 survival horror game, this is what you had to contend with. Like, you're pressing up to get into the next room, and all of a sudden you're turning left because that's the way the direct. It's like.
Yeah, you have to be careful with the controls over transitions like that.
Yeah, some people love this. I did not.
Yeah, it's definitely it adds another element of gameplay. It's almost a game in itself.
Right, and now, like in terms of like FMV graphics, is it actually going to be FMV or is it going to be something like simulating the style?
I actually, in terms of technicality, I know. I think we're using Unreal to render them, and so the cutscenes will be rendered in Unreal as well, I believe. But I know that like some of the 3D artists at the moment are creating those 3D moving animated environments. So I'm not 100% sure from like a technical standpoint if that actually classifies as FMV, or it would be kind of more a 3D environment that is animated. But that's the way it's going, and at the moment there's screenshots and images of all the various angles, and they're kind of detailing and doing drafts of all those 3D environments.
Right. It's just, I suppose my question is this going to be one of those games where it has like the old game and the new game and you have a button that can switch from one to the other?
I don't know if that is going to be an option. I would have to ask about that. And in terms of like, again, from a technical standpoint, if that's actually feasible or not, I don't know. Yeah. But for example, if there was a room with a walkway and two big fans that are rotating, at the moment the artists are making a view that is of a walkway with two big fans that are spinning, and adding steam and textures and all that kind of thing.
Like, well, the big problem would be those aforementioned FMV backgrounds, because here's how it worked. FMV backgrounds and pre-rendered assets were set at a specific resolution, and you literally could not change that. It's like usually 640 by 480, and that's kind of one of the reasons why a lot of games from that era need to be remade as opposed to remastered, because otherwise you're just stuck at that particular resolution. So
I think it will.
Mm-hmm.
It will be about making it higher definition and rather than recreating the atmosphere from the old ones, and even the scenery that was in those video background, full motion video backgrounds, but making them the new, and I think the level of depth in them and everything like that comes to life as well, like the lighting and everything like that, and dust particles and some steam and everything like that really works well.
Right, now, in terms of story, is it just going to be the same story that we saw back in the first game, or with this remake, are we going to see elements from Fear Effect Sedna change elements in Fear Effect to make sure everything lines up, that kind of thing?
Not anything drastic, just teases of things that weren't invented yet when the first game came out, or whatever you mean?
Yeah, so, things like that.
Yeah, I think it'll be more about staying true to the original, but maybe we'll have some Easter eggs in there, like maybe you could unlock Hannah's outfit to be the Sedna outfit or something along those lines. But the baseline should be a nostalgia on steroids for the people who played the originals, and they have the same experience. They remember playing before, but just again on a new device in higher definition, and hopefully find it just a great way to re-experience the whole thing.
Right, and how far along could you say that Fear Effect Reinvented is?
Well, I suppose we were working on little prototype bits before, and then we were mostly working on the teaser. Once we kind of got sign off and the style refined, and we had the direction set, and then a couple of weeks ago we wrapped up production. So the creative team have now been shifting focus onto Reinvented from Sedna. A couple of times there might be a bug that crops up that they need to, there's a graphical error, like there were some hologram images that they were fixing the other day that were in Sedna because they were having some issues, or cutscenes on certain operating systems or whatever. But mostly now it's they're mapping out some of those backgrounds from the original game. The other day, the whole creative department played through from start to finish Fear Effect 1 as a refresh, and yeah, we're starting to see more actual content rather than it being just talking about it.
That's good to hear. It's like, let's see. I suppose you couldn't go into technical specifications, like in terms of what you're shooting for on consoles, like 1080p, 60 frames per second, that kind of deal.
No, I don't really know that whole side of it, but I think it shouldn't be anything that would be underwhelming. Say that.
Nah, that's about what I am expecting. Like, the game looks good, mind you, but it doesn't. It doesn't look like it's going to tax, say, the PlayStation 4 Pro or anything.
No,
either.
No, it's not esports frame rate necessary kind of game also.
Yeah, and both games will probably work just fine on, say, the Nintendo Switch. You know, reason why we usually single out the Nintendo Switch version is because, well, it's significantly less powerful than even a base PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and a lot of games do have to make sacrifices in order to get onto it. But from what I've seen from Sedna and Reinvented, that shouldn't be the case. Obviously I can't say for certain. Only like you could, but this is just my estimation. Let's see.
Yeah, I think there's lots of factors when doing console ports. For example, with the Switch release, I had to wait so long to actually confirm that it would actually be available for Nintendo Switch because of some tests that had to be done or contractual things and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that go into that process that I'm not really aware of, and I'm sure there's more to it than that. So, but yeah, I think it will work pretty well on the Switch, and so many people have had a great reaction to it. So a lot of people are excited to be able to play both Sedna and Reinvented whilst on a train or on a plane or whatever. And I think that's on the go. I think that's quite appealing to. Sometimes that's a bigger factor for a lot of gamers now to be able to play it anywhere and anytime rather than just in front of their big TV with their console. So that there's a good positive reaction for it.
Right. So another question, we might be a bit too far out for an answer to this, but is this game both games actually going to be digital only, or are you looking into physical options as well?
Again, one of those things I can't say anything about, I don't think, but just saying that would probably say that it's not been thought about. There's definitely a possibility.
Right.
But,
gotcha.
Yeah, can't say one way or the other.
It's a good policy. Yeah. It's like, because, one answer or another will be definitive otherwise.
And it's better than making stuff up.
Yeah. We're having to lie about it. It's like...
Yeah.
Anyway, and I don't know if you can talk price yet either.
No, I don't even on that aspect. I have absolutely no idea. But I think it's one of those things. Again, with having Forever and Square Enix, kind of, they take care of a lot of those elements that smaller. Well, they have the experience and the infrastructure of larger companies to, when it comes to legal and distribution and signing up contracts and all the dealing with money. It's not just a case of we make the game and press send and then see what happens. So there's also those things that I'm sure someone in Forever and Square and I suppose Benjamin knows more about those kinds of things than me as well. But again, probably something that's being verified in the next few months.
Indeed. And let me see here. So beyond these two Fear Effect games, I don't know how much you can speak on this, but obviously the logical question is, would Sushee be up for remaking Retro Helix or completing Inferno, that kind of deal? Or are you guys concerned about becoming the Fear Effect developer, so to speak?
I suppose in a way, yes and no. Yes, we don't want to just be branded with that's all we do. But I think that's also got a huge part on why we're expanding as a company as well, so that we've got a larger team, that we're not just 100% dedicated to one project at a time, that we can work across multiple projects. But yes, as well, it's good that people can kind of associate with us and kind of talk. There's an open line of communication with us about all things Fear Effect, and the reason Sedna happened is because of the fans and the support we got, and we take the criticisms and the comments seriously, and it can actually impact the way we make a game, or if at all make a game. And Sedna was a good example of that on Kickstarter and its development, and Reinvented is an even better example, because the main reason it happened is because there was of the fans and their support and people asking for it. It was just a no-brainer. And regarding Inferno and Retro Helix, for Retro Helix, there's already people asking about that, and that kind of support is only going to work in our favor and theirs, because it's that kind of support that gets heard by not just us, but by Square Enix as well, and by Forever, and those games get made that way, and we'd love to continue. There's nothing I can say on the matter of whether we will or not.
Right.
But, I can say we'd love to continue working on Fear Effect games, and I can say that we have a build in the office of Inferno that I've not actually played through yet, but I only found out about it last week, so I will have a playthrough of that soon, which will be quite exciting. So I know that there is content from Inferno that we've got in the building, and there's lots of people asking about Retro Helix being the next project, and I think if people keep asking about it, you kind of puts up those chances again.
Makes sense. I mean, that is how we got Reinvented.
Exactly. Yep.
Right. So I'm going to see if there are any final questions from my colleagues here.
You more or less asked the one I was going to ask about if this does well and people are interested, if there were any chance of remaking the second one, or like remaking and releasing the one that never did. So
Yeah.
that was pretty much what I was going to ask about.
Yeah.
And the answer
like
was about what I
people do.
Sorry.
Okay.
Can't.
Go Galax.
No, I say yeah, and the answer is about what I expected. I'm glad that can't be heard, and making it known might make it happen, but who knows?
Indeed. Well, so if there are no more questions or comments, I think I will conclude the proceedings here. Teej, it was lovely having you on the program.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we've been keeping tabs on Fear Effect Sedna throughout its development, and we're looking forward to playing the final game. Like, we'll probably ask you for review codes when it around the time of release and that sort of thing, and we might see to have you back on the program when Fear Effect Reinvented is more in the spotlight, beyond, say, a teaser trailer.
Yeah, for sure. That'd be
All
great.
Right. So yeah, Fear Effect Sedna, it's content complete. It's currently it's undergoing QA. Look for it in early 2018. Fear Effect Reinvented later on in 2018, I suppose. Yeah. I don't think any sort of release date has been announced, but 2018 sounds. Yeah, 2018 sounds about as good as anything else at this point. All right, so that'll do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for our main show, where we have the creative forces behind the Loathing series. West of Loathing and King of Loathing. Yeah, Zach Johnson and Kevin Simmons of Asymmetric Publications. As mentioned before, we were supposed to have this interview a month ago, but reality ensued. So better late than never. Until tomorrow, I wish you good gaming.
All right, we're still on air, but